and welcome to this episode of the Lillian Link podcast. My guest today is Bob McCarthy, who's one of the best marketers I've ever worked with. He started his career in copywriting and creative, and now does everything you can imagine in marketing. He's one of the best marketing strategists I know. Obviously, still incredible when it comes to messaging and understanding what brands should be saying and how companies should be talking to people. We talk a lot about a bunch of different things kind of across all of marketing today, but one of the biggest ones is obviously AI. AI is a really big deal in today's world when we're talking about marketing and we're talking about creative. Bob does a great job of thinking through the impacts of that. We talk about the good, we talk about the bad. And the biggest thing that we really focus on is how getting AI is really bringing marketing back to basics and how brand and trust are becoming more and more important. So I hope you all enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. And I look forward to bringing more great episodes to you guys like this. Bob, I got a bunch of different things that I'm wondering about, but we're still in Q1. It's the beginning of the year. I hate to be somebody to talk about trends, but what are the things that you're kind of seeing in marketing this year? What are the things that you think are just trends and are going to disappear? And what are things that you think people should actually be doing?
Oh, nobody's ever asked me to name the trend. I'm going to give you some insight on things I think.
That's perfect.
Probably antithetical to the actual trends going on right now, but kind of a little bit of what I'm seeing. So, to the surprise of no one, AI is everywhere. Continue to be everywhere. I think one of the things I'm seeing is a little pushback against it. It's not going anywhere. So take everything I'm about to say with a little bit of a grain of salt and the understanding that it is very much part of the future. But I think after a year of it being everywhere and told how much it's going to change things, and it is actively changing things, there is a fair amount of pushback. Some of it has to do with promises maybe not delivered. Or even companies think it would, and probably employees thinking it was going to replace the workforce. I think we're swinging back into a time where it's the humanness, the human element is probably going to become a bit of a premium. And especially those people where their humanness is a differentiator, a unique skill set. And so I'll just give an example of what I mean by that. AI is wonderful at writing very mediocre things, and that's not a knock on it. Most of marketing copywriting for a long time has been very mediocre, going back to blog farms and people just churning out blogs, but maybe outsourcing it for 10 cents a word or something like that. And it was just all copy blog posts. AI does that very well. It does better than those blog farms, and even cheaper than 10 cents a word for the most part. But I think that there's just going to be now even more of a glut of that very mediocre type content out in the world. And so I was reading an article somewhat recently that was just hey, remember when blogging used to be kind of messy? And it was when it first started, it was almost like a online journal diary, and it had a lot of whoever was writing it had their personality and voice, and it wasn't very corporate. It was a little messy. It was like the individuals itself, and there was a lot of value in that. I think that value kind of is going to be coming back a bit. Maybe not the messiness part of it, but tone, voice, individuality, things that can't be easily replicated by predicting the next word through machine learning. So that's certainly one trend I'm looking at.
So I know this is something we've talked about a lot, because the volume, there's always a conversation in marketing, particularly when you're talking about digital marketing, of quality versus quantity. And quantity, from what I'm hearing you say and from what I'm seeing as well, has gotten really easy. Quantity, you can have as much quantity as you want. And it's getting harder to get, because the quantity is going up everywhere, getting that quantity in front of people is getting harder. So it sounds like the quality is where you would have people balance that. How would you recommend companies balance that?
So it's interesting. I think one of the things that AI does enable is for particularly smaller companies or companies with smaller departments, where you and I have spoken a lot about the need for like a multi-channel approach. Having the material to put into across all of these channels is very challenging for many companies, and AI enables you to do that. I think there's just smart ways to do it. So it is finding people that know you, know your voice. It's you yourself as a company finding your voice and your identity, because this is going to be your differentiator going forward. There's going to be this great homogenization of like content's just going to turn everybody into clones of each other, like if the more AI there is. So really knowing who you are and how you're different and expressing that and not being afraid to step out and finding the people or the teams that can really help you add some color to your company is really where you need to go. It's thinking we used to work with companies a lot where they was afraid to take a risk, like they just wanted to be like, I would just want to fit in with everybody else and not be seen as too outside. And like, you're going to have to be seen as something outside and like take some risks here and there. Otherwise you're just going to fall into the great void that's going to be the middle going forward.
Yeah. So this actually ties well into something that I mentioned to you, which is the idea that like in general, people tend to have these like same things, particularly B2B is where you and I have spent a lot of our time working together. B2B in particular is really susceptible to that of, let's say, the same exact thing. Yeah. So what are some of the things that you see frequently that people say? Is their like their message, their thing that's special about them, but maybe is generic and will probably get worse with AI?
Yeah. So, and this is all like, there's always exceptions to the rule. So I say there's the contrary. The opposite is probably also true, where it could be a differentiator in the right circumstances. But our team, we'll always ask clients, like, what's different about you? Like, our team, like, we've got the best team. Like, are your competitors saying like they have garbage teams? Like they hire really bad people? Being very product focused, like, or just very literal of like, we sell X, like you go to their website, it's just like, well, okay. Like, yeah, I mean, like, we do this better. And I think one of the things you see with AI though, is also maybe an attempt to like come up with messaging, using AI. What you have to realize is it's that homogenization again, is like AI is working off of like an established language, and established ideas. And so it is to a certain extent regurgitating something. So I see a lot of like, elevate this, or you see a lot of constructs in sentences and headlines that are the same. Within our industry, marketing, there's always the go-to of like revenue, sales. And it's like these things, I think, even when there's an attempt to come up with messaging or positioning, and it's either very generic, you think it's something special about you that's not, it's anyone could say it, or you take a stab at something, but it's just a rehash of like what's been said out there a million times already.
Well, and I think the example that I think of, because all the things that you said, like to your point, if you frame them right, they could be differentiated messaging. Like if your product really is special, you can talk about how special your product is. If your team really is special, you can talk about how special your team is.
Oh yeah, if your team's made up of like, Nobel Prize winners, like yes, your team, like obviously, but like, usually not the case.
Well, and if you're saying your team is better than other teams and it's a bunch of people who've worked there for 6 months and don't have really great qualifications, be really careful about that. If your team is made up of people who've been working together for 20 years and have created stuff that's fantastic, do a bunch of profiles on those people. Like there's a difference there.
And I think the other big mistake that I see, which is like sort of like, I look at it like this sort of like disconnected, dissociated headline. Like even sometimes you'll see somebody come up with, you can have a really generic headline, but if you have a wonderful story, like if you're thinking about your collateral or your website and it just tells like a really great story that's all brought together, like, all right, like great design, there's a great hierarchy, things like just build off itself. Like, okay, it works. Oftentimes what I see is like they'll get a copywriter that's like got a knack for a headline, and it's just like there's that headline, and then like it's just floating. It's like it has no body to it. Like it's not connected to the rest of the story. And really, when you're talking about something memorable, the difference between something that like has legs and like really sticks with somebody over the long term or engages with them versus clever is like whether or not there's a story that goes along to it. It's not just empty calories, and so there's that element as well. Like where you just see something that's like catchy doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. I'm about to compliment you. So be prepared for the discomfort of me complimenting you. Yeah. But in the time that we worked together really closely with different clients, getting them messaging, one of the things that I found was really different in working with you was the way that you used a deep understanding of a client's business to get down to 2 sentences, right? Like you get down to 5 words after hours of conversation. And I think that that's something too, that like if leveraging AI, you could maybe do that, but what is it for the process that you go through? Why is that important? And why, like, how do you do that?
I think you bring up something that I think I've been considering deeply lately, which is, so one of the parts of our process is really getting to know a client's business and working through things like their buyer personas and how they interact with those personas. And historically, it's been a very time-intensive process where me personally, anyways, like I invest a lot of myself into it. Lots of questions, just like I don't take anything at face value. I'm always just kind of like digging in for like, well, why? What about this? What about that? To the point where it's probably annoying for my teammates and the clients to a certain extent. But I do think that's where some of the magic starts happening, because you really do start to like really understand like, what is it that this company, not just what they do, but why and what makes them different, and a little bit of like, not just what's their DNA at a business level, but like, it's going to sound so corny, like what is the soul of the business? And for me, why that's always been important is because when I'm thinking about doing messaging, or I'm thinking about doing copywriting for them, or thinking about like how this is going to work into something like design, I'm really trying to find a piece of myself within it, because I want to connect with it. Because when it comes time to then go and do the writing for it, I want it to feel authentic. And I think one of the complaints that companies often have when they either work with an agency or a contractor that is like not part of their company is that like, well, you can tell, and that's because there's not that investment in it. And I'm always looking to find a way to connect with that company on an emotional level myself, so that when I go to write to it, it's like I'm invested in it. It comes out as authentic. I think the trouble I see now is like we're all trying to find ways to use AI to circumvent processes that are very long or just shorten them. And I can come up with buyer personas now with AI very, very well. But there is something lost in like not having that conversation, like that workshop, that deep dive part that takes a lot of time. But the fruits that come out of it are like, oh, I get it. I get you. I get what you're going for. I would say 9 out of 10 times in the past when we were doing those types of workshops, you'd see me like reach over and grab a piece of paper and start jotting down right there, like messaging ideas, because as we're talking through, I'm getting it. And it's something that like you're skipping over a little bit of that learning process process and just getting the information. And so there's a balance there that has to be struck as well as we move forward.
Well, and it's one of the things that I talk a lot with clients about is the idea that like people, it's why marketers always answer questions with "it depends." Like there's never like, it's the most annoying thing. And it's so tempting when you see other people with quick answers of like, you should always do this, you should always do that. But the real answer is it depends. And it takes so long to figure that out. But I always go, great marketing needs to be aligned with business goals. So you have to understand what the business goals are to create the marketing goal. And then you need to understand who you're talking to, who that buyer persona is, and leveraging tools like AI can help expedite that conversation or add depth or give other kind of details to things, add color. But then it's all of that, then the message, then the content, then the tactic. You don't start the quicker you get to a tactic, the quicker you're talking to someone and they're going, you need to be doing this, that, or the other. That's great. That's probably like, there's a chance that's what you should do. That's probably really generic advice. Sometimes it's right, but it's not going to be the reason the diligence is worth it. The reason the conversations have value is that the thing at the end is going to be so much better. And even if you want to leverage a tool like AI, you still need to do that with some of that work. Maybe it's faster, and you need somebody who knows what questions to ask.
Yeah, to your point, when you go through that process, everything starts to become very much connected in a very deep, meaningful way as well. Your messaging connects back to your buyer personas and what you do really well and who you are, and then your content's connected to that, is connected to the channels you're choosing, and it's all deeply rooted. And this in no way is supposed to be like me beating up on AI. I love using AI for a lot of things. It's really, I think all of us owe it to ourselves as professionals and the companies we work with and work for to like find the balance and not just the easiest, fastest way out of like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. But it's like, what is the best way to do this to like still put together something that's meaningful and valuable, and see if you can deliver some of the efficiency that's been promised.
Yeah. And I also like, I think there's huge advantages to AI. Since AI conversation started, I'm like, marketing is going to be the first one. Like 10 years ago, I had people tell me that having a job writing copy was going to be a huge mistake because in 5 years, marketing copy wasn't going to be written by people anymore. And that's, I think for sure you've also heard that conversation too, but that doesn't mean
I've lost sleep over it. Yeah.
There's so much more to it than that, where like there are places it works and there's places that it's really helpful, but you also need quality control. Like we see that with all sorts of things. I mean, it can lose that human thing. Like, I can't remember, this is going to be bad. I can't remember when it was, but Spotify, I think it was 2 years ago, did their Spotify Wrapped, and it came out and it turns out it was all AI, and everybody like didn't like it anymore because there was something in there that they didn't know.
It's studies show time and time again that like most people don't like, even like when I interact, like I use Claude, like that's my preferred platform, but even interacting with it, like I'm never like, oh yeah, this feels really authentic. It feels like an elevated version of me doing like a Google search for or the interaction with it. There is something that feels a little like compressed and cold, and like you read it and you're like, yeah, that's true, that's right, but there's just something that's not, that heartbeat's not there, and people pick up on it. The downside for a lot of marketers is like they never say wrote with a heartbeat to begin with. Like they were always like, and those are the people that you just like, oh, like you're definitely in the crosshairs for being replaced by AI because like, give me a 500 word blog, a listicle, and that's what they, paid the rent with. And I feel badly about that, but it requires the rest of us to like, to kind of carve out your space where you're different from the machine. Like, what do you add that it can't or doesn't?
Yeah. And the copy that I wrote most often when I was writing copy most recently was social media copy. And I told people all the time, I'm like, yeah, AI is not really going to change the speed at which I can churn that out, because it was really fast to begin with. Like, it was not like writing some social media copy is like not, a lot of it is same phrases that come out. But the editing process of what comes out of AI is the same process that I used to use when I was writing it from scratch, where it's like, oh, this, I don't have to start thinking about it until the draft is there. And then I'm going to read through it and be like, okay, what are some things that make it sound a little bit more like me? What are things that sound a little bit more like the company, whatever it is. But we don't need to trash talk AI much more. But one of the things that you and I have talked about being really valuable with AI is to take something that's really valuable, like a high value asset, maybe a guide or like an infographic or a long video, and turn it into these bite-sized pieces of content that can be used over and over again. Can you talk a little bit about where you see that as being valuable?
I think that's the most valuable part of it right now. It's very expensive and time consuming to be able to say, put together a campaign's worth or multiple campaigns worth of content. Most companies don't have the internal teams to do it, don't have the budget to be able to do the things you need to be able to do. So one of the things I do love is you start from that point of something human created. So if we're going to work from the premise that my trend that I'm looking forward to is like really great, high quality human content being at a premium, you start with that. You start with that as your baseline. You have the ability to train a GPT or a skill, whatever the platform calls it, with like, this is what the writing is, here's the tone, here's the voice, here's the style guide, give it examples. But if you can start down that road of giving it some context, and then you present it with something that's like, say it's an ebook, really wonderfully written, and it has that human, and then you can say like, now I need this turned into your content strategy of like, I want a tip sheet, I want a blog post, I want 3 blog posts, I want emails, I want it done like this. Now you're starting to take something that hopefully it's picking up on all the effort you put into it and turning it into the material, the fodder to be able to put out into the world. And it's not taking you months. It's not even taking you necessarily weeks, but you can do it in a short amount of time. And, it doesn't really, it still takes time, to your point earlier of like, you have to go through and like edit it through, but it can very quickly take that and turn it into a bunch more supporting material. And that's one of my favorite things to be able to support is, And
I think there are some people who are like, oh, I can take a couple of sentences and expand it into this big thing. And I think I see it as the exact opposite of, you can take this big thing and get it across all these different channels.
It's maybe the most valuable way I see. And to that end, like I would go to a client and say, well, what should we do? I'm like, well, start with something big that you can, that I can get a lot of mileage out of that. Like make the most out of your investment, start big, and then pull it down into like as many other things as you possibly can.
Yeah. One of the things, again, I keep saying things we've talked about before, because you and I talk about this stuff all the time. But one of the things that I think about a lot, that I've been thinking about, especially with AI, is the way a lot of things feel like they're going back to basics, like back to, like, for one of the examples that I talk to people about is like, how do you know what to trust? And I remember learning in school, like, okay, you can't trust the internet because you don't know, so you need at least 3 sources or whatever, like figuring that stuff out, and where people are getting their information from and what that means for customers and what they're trying to do. I'm curious. I have some thoughts on it, but I'm curious what your thoughts are, if that wasn't too weird of a question.
Meaning, how is it that customers can find trust in this world of hallucinations and
and build trust and like be a resource that people go to for answers when Google's just showing them ads and ChatGPT is sending them a million of the same answers that doesn't really get to what they're asking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think it is like the it's a big piece of the puzzle going forward. And I think it ties back into like what I would probably consider another trend, which is brand, which is really working on your brand building. And maybe not in the, so I think, especially for some of the space we've worked in with like, which has been some of that HubSpot inbound part, like it's like brand became like a dirty word for like a decade of like, well, they'll just come to your website and they'll download a thing and they'll fill it out and like they'll become a customer. And it almost feels like for as much as we're moving forward, it is cyclically coming back around to this thing that used to probably be popular like in 60s, 70s, 80s, or really before then. Not that marketing was any more trustworthy in those periods of time, but like your trust came from like really getting to know a brand and like building it, connecting with people, pulling them in, having them start to feel like there was something about you that can, not just connected with them, but like they could identify with, either about like their pain point or some personality trait. And I think as you go through, you build brand and you actually put in the effort to establish something that feels trustworthy and feels foundational and structurally strong and just feel like it stands for something. Like that's the start of it. Like I know a lot of other people would give the answers like, well, you got to get reviews and you have to get testimonials and you have to get case studies, and those things are all true. I just really think it starts with when I look at my own buying practices of like finding somebody that like I feel like I connect with. When I feel like I connect with something, that's when I start to trust it. There's a very emotional thing that goes on there where if you feel connected to it, like no different than meeting somebody on the street, if you feel connected to them, you and I are a great example. You and I met very, very, this way. We both remote. And it's just like there's something, one or two conversations you connect and you're just like, I know that person, and very quickly start to trust that person. And I think there's something there with companies and brands as well that they haven't had to do other than the largest brands for a long, long, long time.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also that trust ties into the quality thing that we're talking about too,
Correct.
Where you have to do quality control, because if you really are an expert in the thing you say you're an expert in, which that's the game for most of the like companies that I've worked with. Again, most of my career has been with B2B. You need to it's a smaller audience of people you talk to, and your brand identity matters there. And one bad AI blog that gives bad information means that they don't trust anything else you're saying.
Yeah. One 6-fingered picture in a blog post, somebody that's like, is like you're marred, it's just, no, I think like if that's the route you're going to go and you're not going to put anything in place to, oversee it and make sure that it's in line and like it's what it's quoting is accurate and actually exists, then you're in trouble. So you do have to kind of put the time in there. Like the adage has always been made that it's like a entry level employee. So like are you going to let like the intern in college or the first job they have out of college just run wild with all of your content and all your commands? No. So I think that's where that, that adage holds true as well. Your AI agent, like, yes, give it some guidance, also check its work.
Yeah. One of the thing that I find really interesting that's happening too beyond trust is also channels and what's coming up. And with search, I'm just doing some research for another project on this. Web traffic, organic web traffic across the board is down by 2.5%. People are spending their time. Google still matters. 90% of people use Google. That goes up to 95% when you include other traditional search engines. So I've had people say, that Google doesn't matter anymore. That is wrong. AI search is going way up. There's an estimated 730 billion AI prompt searches in 2026. But there are 5 trillion Google searches. And the thing I find interesting about that is that that's up from 2 trillion in 2024. So that says to me that a lot more of people are sitting on Google and spending their time on Google rather than getting to websites. But yeah.
I think what Google has cornered, and I haven't seen any numbers on this yet. So I've seen the same numbers, like Google still matters. People still use it like an astonishing amount. And because I'm narcissistic, I turn everything back to like how do I use it? And I still use Google, but what I realize is that I use AI overviews quite a bit, and then even also the people also ask, like going into the blue links at a much lower rate than say 2 years. So what I think Google has figured out very quickly and done a good job with is that like that's a half step, right, between what you're used to, what you've been used to for the last 20 some odd years, and like where things are going. So, there's a lot of people that aren't quick to adopt to like, well, I'm just going to go into a brand new platform and get all of my answers. Most people want to go where they feel comfortable. And AI overviews really is like that half step. You ask your question, you go in, then if you click on it, it actually takes you right into Gemini, and then like you can have the chat there. So I think it's maybe a long way of saying, like, I wonder if some of those Google, like, yes, everyone's using Google. I think it's a little bit misleading in that they're definitely not using it the same way. And I think, though, it's still sort of like this, I do a search and I'm really interacting with AI. It's just not in that way, like when I go to ChatGPT or if I go straight to Gemini or Claude. But it fundamentally does change the way that people buy and the way they're using it, the channel, and what it means for how you have to be thinking about how people are going to be interacting and engaging with you. It's much further along, most likely, than in the past.
Yeah. And I think, those high, you still want to be doing everything you can to get those high intent traffic on your site. But the rest of that is just really different right now. And it's in a process of change. And I always say when something's changing like this, I prefer having these conversations of like, what are we seeing? What do we think that means? How are we behaving differently? People who make bold predictions about exactly what's going to happen in the future, someone's going to be right and most people are going to be wrong. Like, just because there's enough people guessing, some people are going to be right. That doesn't mean they're smarter than other people. But your organic search is going down, particularly in spaces where or organic search traffic, not organic search, particularly in spaces where what was it, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you had if you wrote a blog that answered a question that people were Googling, you were winning because people were going to your website, they were paying attention there.
It was always a bit of like a red herring anyways. Like, I think some people probably knew it, which was like, everyone went forward and like, we're going to write all these blog posts, and how much of that, for like really early in the buyer journey type content. And the question was always just like, okay, well, how many of those people like searching for that and ending up on your website traffic are actually like customers? And it didn't really matter because part of SEO, which was a little reductive and dumbing down, was just like, just get them to your website. And that was the metric to show like, how many people came here. And now it like when you see the buying behavior now where it's like, okay, all that traffic has gone away and it's being answered in an AI overview. And it's like, well, we all like, companies, when they see that they mourn the loss of traffic, and you're like, chances are that was probably really never actually your customer to begin with. And it was a long buyer journey for them to like ask, you and I used to both work in barbecue. So I'll give an example of like, what is a pellet grill? And like to get from there to all the way to like buying from you was always a super long journey, whether or not they landed on that number one spot for your blog post or not.
Yeah.
So it is like a bit of a resetting. To your point, the one area where it hasn't really impacted things as much is much higher intent. So even AI overviews are not prevalent on sort of like that product level, middle of the buyer journey type search, where it's like a product or service level type search. It doesn't mean if I'm going into the chat and I'm asking for recommendations, that's not what I'm getting. But if I do a search for a product, you generally aren't finding the summaries there. That's still where your SEO is going to matter.
And that's where too, like the B2B versus like e-commerce is a whole different conversation about how search is affecting e-commerce, because the way things need to be set up so that it's showing up on Google. Again, Google's trying to keep you on platform for those purchases. Where the Google paid stuff comes in, all of that is kind of a larger conversation. But particularly for B2B, when it's not like nobody's buying $6 million worth of product, of any kind of product, unless people are dealing with a scale that I'm not familiar with. That is not usually an e-commerce purchase. So making sure for those kind of searches, you're aware, having an awareness of what people are searching for right before they make a purchase, what those high intent searches are, and making sure that you're getting on the top of the right ones is really important.
I think the thing that companies have to be the most aware, and this was true probably even before, but it's more true now than ever. So much research is being done before you get you may not even get a chance to sell to somebody. There is, they're doing so much research ahead of time. They're doing so much groundwork on the products, evaluating you against competitors, that you really have to be putting in your work on your website and all of your channels to kind of make sure that what you want to be said about you, how you want to position yourself, how you want to pitch yourself is out there. Because I think it's something like 66% of it is being done ahead of a sales conversation. And a lot of teams still act like it's just going to be, I call up and I'm like, hey, Lillian, tell me about your business and why I should buy from you. Like it's 33Me or something. But, it's just not the case. When they're calling you, it's probably because they decided to buy from you already. They went through the process. So those are going to be the companies that win, have sort of put into play all of the information that's needed to be found without them on a self-guided tour.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that all these changes is affecting too is like for a while there, if you could get to the top of Google, that was worth more than any other type of marketing channel. That was worth more than anything else. So that's where you should be spending your dollars when you're thinking about your agencies, or when you're thinking about like getting the right person on your team, somebody who can get you to the top of AI, or not AI, Google is going to be the right call for you. But now there's some more traditional marketing channels that are having value again, because yes, that high intent search, we talked about the important pieces there, but there's other places that can have a higher ROI if you do something that, like going all the way back to direct mail, paying more attention to your events and how you're partnering with associations, like all that stuff.
I love direct. I mean, you know this about me. I love direct mail. I think a lot of us are back on to events as well. Like it's so hard. All channels across the board, the ones that were the most popular for the last decade are like, they're just gluts. There's just a glut of information there that even if you can get shown, it's almost like it's white noise. Like people just look it over. So email, like, my email is just full. Social media feeds are challenging. Paid media on social is challenging. It's not that like you can't get shown, but like we have all become trained to kind of like tune out all but the things that like really mean something to you. I think when you look at direct mail, anytime I get anything that like is different or like stands out, like people don't get a lot of mail anymore. So if you have the ability to find your audience and get it in front of them, like you do get like a little bit of quiet time with them, with like the half dozen other pieces of mail that they got that like potentially you can have their attention. If you're going to the events and you choose your events wisely, like it's probably one of your best opportunities to get in front of like your potential customer and your audience. And if you can turn that into something like a speaking at an event in particular, on a panel or a board, like that's really a great opportunity to establish that trust, build that brand, get connection in a way that's like really, really challenging in the digital world. It doesn't mean you go to every event. I think you have to be like really smart about where you do it, what you do, where you invest your money in packages. But like those are great opportunities to actually get in front of people that you're not worried now, like, is that my actual like prospect or not? Like you should know that they are for an event.
Yeah. And I think that ties well into two things. One, you should know there's information that those events will provide to you on who's going to show up and who was there last year and all that stuff. That information is absolutely accessible. If you can't find it on their website, somebody will talk to you because they've got a salesperson who's dying to sell you that event. Yeah. So there's due diligence that can be done there. With the direct mail as well, this comes back to what we've been talking about, where it's like, you need to understand your goal. You need to understand your audience. Mm-hmm. The direct mail has a shocking amount of targeting that they can do now. It used to be like a big broad brush, but the same improvements that have been made to digital targeting have been made to this direct mail kind of targeting as well.
I think that's some of the misunderstanding about direct is like, they just feel like you're dropping like 500,000 postcards and in like scattershot. And it's really not. It's the same targeting you use for a digital ad can really be applied now for, mailing addresses. And again, it goes industry. You have to know, like, are the people you're dealing with someplace like it's not one size fits all, but you do really have that ability to do narrow targeting.
And if you do the more narrow targeting, again, like with B2B, you can get really specific about who you want to talk to. You can get really specific about where those people are, all that good stuff. And then make sure you have that strong brand that you talked about, and pick some artwork that's going to stand out, because everybody still gets postcards from the local dentist, which is how I found my dentist.
Yeah.
But you can have something that, like, at this printer that I've partnered with, Renee, she's the best. I'm on their list of stuff, and they send me stuff, and they've got this like cool soft touch. They've got all the die cuts.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to do it. It's going to blur out, but yeah.
It's from them. You and I are on the same mailing list. They send me things routinely, and I love it. They sent me something right up my alley. Like, they know it was like a fold out thing that was, and even my kids looked at it the other day and they were like, "Ooh, what is that?" And it was like a backstage pass, like ticket inside for like, and it just made it feel like an exclusive type thing. And here's your ticket. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And to your point, that's where you're looping back in, like, your branding, your differentiation, and making it something you get it. And it's like really hard to ignore, whether it's because of the messaging, the colors, or if it's dimensional or tactilely, something different. Like, you have all these things you don't have access to in this digital realm that has to do with a human experience. Like, even if it's just being like heavier paper, with like a different fitting on it, like, you're going to touch it in the mail and you'd be like, oh, what's that? Like, before you look at it.
And people check their mail. Like, everybody checks their mail. Like, if I can't remember the statistic, and it's probably a little out of date, but something like 90% of people check their mail every day. If you told me you could get a 90% open rate on an email, do you know how much money I would spend to get a good email list? And then if you're doing it already, spend another dollar, you don't even have to spend a full dollar, but spend $1 a piece making something really good, get a really targeted list, get a really good message, make it something that's going to be impactful. And yeah, that's going to cost money. And yeah, you might not see the direct ROI from the very first time that you sent this out, but how much more valuable is it than buying a million emails?
Well, I think that's the other part too, in addition to things like targeting. They do have the ability to do exactly what you do with digital, which is like you send it to a list, and then they can also do retargeting through like a social channel like LinkedIn or Meta or someplace else, or send email. So you can try and surround them a little bit. It doesn't have to be one and done. It could just be another influence, another area of influence for you, but a very different one. I mean, yeah. I'm with you. I get my mail every single day, and I do look. Like I said, I probably get only like 3 to 6 things. So I look at each one, and so it's you. I don't look at all my email. I don't check my email every day. Just too much. I definitely skim through sender like knit. So
I do the select all to mark them as unread, and then I uncheck the 3 I want to read, and then the rest of it goes.
So that must be that's the way I do it. So that's
so all the cool people are doing it that way, Bob.
So everyone is actually trying to delete everything and then looking for the 1 or 2 things they don't want to delete.
Yeah. Or with mail, I look at every piece of mail. I don't it's not, I'm not always going to make a purchase, but you're not going to make a purchase every time. And it's that brand and trust, which.
Well, to your point about your dentist, and I did the same thing. I get a postcard for tree trimming, and I don't always need my tree trim, but I get postcards all the time from the person that does it. And you kind of had in the back of your head when you have to trim that tree, in the same thing. So our good friend Renee continues, I've met Renee once or twice, but she continues to send me things in the mail. If I need direct mail, or I need a client has a need for, who do you think I'm calling? It's the part I see all the cool stuff they're doing, and I can speak to it. And beside the fact that I love Renee, I like her a lot. It's just it's top of mind. That's just going to be who you call.
Well, and I've worked with Renee. Oh God, I'm going to do the math on that and get scared for a long time, we'll say. And I keep going back to her because I trust her. And she's not going to be the least expensive, and she's not going to be she's going to have the coolest new things every time I talk to her. She's going to know what I want. She's going to come through when something goes wrong. She's come through for me so many times. And so I have so much trust with her. And yeah, they keep it top of mind by sending stuff to me. But that's not the reason I'm excited about direct mail. The reason I'm excited about direct mail is because all this other stuff is not working as well. And it's the space that people aren't playing in right now. People are playing in a lot of spaces. This is when they're not.
Yep. And I think it is because that at least the assumption of well, that costs more compared to what you think a paid ad campaign costs. But it just feels to me like it's better spent. I don't know. Same with events. I'm just I kind of have more trust in what that's doing versus
and having it be something we talk about a lot is you have to be holistic about things. You want to knock on that door. When I was taking marketing classes, there was something like 7 knocks. I think it's probably 1,000 now. It's so many knocks on a door. There's something you see 15,000 marketing messages a day. So making sure that your people start going, oh, I've seen this in the mail, and oh, I see this. If somebody has gotten a direct mail piece from you before that they read, they're probably more likely to click on your social media ad when it comes across their feed.
Yeah. And I think to bring that all back to when you're talking about the number of marketing messages that someone sees in a day right now, if I look through my feeds for anything, I'm targeted, and it's the same things over and over and over. The same 20 companies have the same message, and it's just it's just white noise in your head. And so you really when we talk about differentiation, that's the importance of it, is like, how can you stand out? And then the importance of, before you do your differentiation, like kind of take a look and see like, what is everyone's talking about like AI. So my feeling is then like, well, we should not talk about it, not because I'm a contrarian, but because like, you're what, gonna be the 21st AI person? Like, oh, let me choose you because you have the most clever AI one. Like everyone's offering, if everyone's offering the same thing, or they're all talking about revenue, or they're all like, you, what are you going to offer in that morass of messages? That's going to be, somebody's going to be like, okay, well that's something different, but still meaningful, not being different for the sake of being different. But
well, and I think to the point that where we started with messaging, like if you have something truly different to say about AI, if you have something truly unique to say about that, if I hear one more company say they're AI enabled and not explain what the hell they mean by that, like I don't know what that would be.
I saw something recently about like basically the homogenization has already started, not even, or it's well underway. It's not even just in the messaging, but like the promise was that like, well, that's going to be your edge, but like everybody has it. So it isn't an edge and everyone's using it. Instead, it's just blah and there. So it's just table stakes. It very quickly became table stakes, like stakes. That's the speed of AI, right? Like, and the accessibility to it. So then you're coming back to then like, well, what does AI enablement mean? And like, if everybody does that, then like, why does it even matter? You have to find something else, and like that's going to resonate with someone beyond like, we use AI, everyone uses it. Like, we use it better. Great. Our team uses it. Yeah.
Yeah. And say better. Sure. What does that mean? Like, actually tell me what that means. And I do believe that there are going to be companies that figure out how to use AI truly better, and they're going to win in that. But just using it isn't going to do much.
Here's my prediction. I'll probably give.
Okay, let's see. Come on. I'll send this to you when it either does or does not come true.
I've had this thought for a while, and it's not like outrageous. It's just, but it seems to be like where everything is going is like, when it first came out, we were all rushing to like, oh, you can use it, and it's going to be an edge, and I'm going to do it. And then very quickly, like the things you're using it for, like they get packaged. And I think even like, agentic, like we have to get on top of agents. And what you can see is like, yes, there's going to be like a novel ways that people can use agents in AI. I think they're all just going to get packaged up. It's just going to become like part of it. And like me being like, I'm going to come up with an agent that's going to be like a copywriter. It's just like, probably that's going to already exist if it doesn't already for me to buy. And it's just like, how comfortable are you working with it? And like and that to me, like, are you comfortable working with it? How do you use it? And it's, the great arms race for it is probably at the technical level, like who can be the one to put their wrapper around it and like offer it up. And you see that already with like Claude and OpenAI. So like Claude just released their coworker, and it's just like, that is essentially like out of the box agents, and HubSpot's been doing it for a bit as well. But in OpenAI, same thing. And it's just like, you can build your own. Smarter people than you and me are going to come up with most of the things I would ever want to use in my not so unique role. And it's going to be all the other things that you do that make you special. So that's my thing, is like don't kill yourself racing too far ahead, because all these companies that try to productize things like agents, I've had a lot of people approach me about it, like, just like, hey, we're coming with agents. And then like within a couple months, it was just like, it's just going to get baked into platforms like so much else that's out there.
And and I think we could talk about AI for like 6 or 7 days. So I do want to go back to one other thing that we were talking about, which is the idea of events coming back. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing be done well, similar to what we talked about with direct mail, is not just looking at it as the event. If you find an association or someone who runs an event that is your target market, figure out what else you can do with them. They have a conversation with somebody at that organization. figure out what's going on, what they can do for ads, what they can do year round, what they can partner with, get those speaker slots. Like having a booth at the right event is great. Figuring out, put the effort, time and effort into making sure that's your right audience, making sure that's who you should be speaking to, making sure that you're like, you're bringing the right stuff, you're bringing the right message, you're establishing that brand, you're establishing that trust. And then if you've put all that effort in, capitalize it by doing surrounding those people and being around with them in a lot of different ways.
I think one of the things you circle back to is, the things that still work really well or are starting to work well again. Events. I think webinars are still valuable to a certain degree, or even like clips. Like this might become but clips on different platforms have done well because inherently they are human in that idea of like building trust. Being able to speak with somebody or see them and interact with them or see how they carry themselves or just all of those things still have a huge amount of value. And I think those are like, and even to a certain extent, I think direct mail does that too, because it interrupts like our digital life. You're going out, like, you're going out to the mailbox, you hey to the neighbor, you're picking it up. There's still something that's much more like human about it, even though like I'm touching something that somebody sent me, even though it's not necessarily, I'm not seeing that person. It's still, it's like the difference between like listening to something on Spotify and having an actual like CD or album and sitting through it and going through it. It's like time was something was put into this and I'm touching it and I'm experiencing it. And I think that human experience is the part, like wherever you can find those, and whether it's an event or it is just being able to present yourself in a certain way, like that's your chance to win. And then putting in what you said, all those other channels around it as well, because obviously people are still there.
Yeah. And the webinar and the speaking, like set up a camera, record that, like that's the big valuable content that we're talking about. Like, yes, if you have the money to invest and make a really good digital guide or ebook or whatever, that's great. But don't let like this conversation that we're having right now, it's going to be clips. I'm going to take the transcript and turn it into blogs. I mean, like this is going to be 100 pieces of content. You know what I mean? Like this is not, and it's you and I are sitting here and talking for an hour, and this is going to be something that I'm going to be able to use for months.
I think also one of the things that people worry about is, I'm not very polished on a webinar or who are we going to send to an event, like, and they worry about, and my argument would be, I don't know that polish is like always what you are looking for. I think there's an authenticity, not to insult us, but you and I have been on client calls together, and I don't think anyone would ever be like, well, those are the two most burnished business people.
Professionals through and through, every second of it.
I've had clients like come back and just be like, wow, like we really like you, and by you, I mean like you and me. And generally when I say things on client calls all the time where I'm like, oh, I don't like, that doesn't seem like the most professional thing to say. Shooting from the hip a bit there, Bob, but there's something about, and I come back to, it's like people like recognize that like that's just you.
Yeah.
And you're not saying anything offensive. You're just like being yourself. Like they met you out at coffee or at a restaurant or at a social gathering. And like, there's a lot of value in that. And so don't go on believing that like, well, I have to be like all buttoned up in this presentation. Like that's not how people connect and trust you. It's like by you being you is how they get it.
It's trust and brand. Like that's what we've come back to over and over
again. Brand, the Bob and Lillian brand is very plaid.
It's a lot of plaid button-ups. It's a lot
very plaid with t-shirt underneath, and
a lot of self-deprecating jokes or just casually bullying each other.
Yes.
But yeah, you want people to trust you, and your brand can be, you are a fun person to work with. Like that can be part of what's establishing your brand.
Casually Brilliant is a wonderful brand.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm going to change the message on my website, which is boring and I put together fast. So don't look too much at it. I'm afraid you're going to go look at my website and judge me. But I'm going to change it to casual and brilliant.
Casual. I think but that would be like, that is like, knowing you and knowing the clients that I know you've worked with in the past, that is what people like about you. Like they would not, and this isn't just blowing smoke at you, I think this is like instructive for a lot of companies out there. When you know your stuff, and you know what you're good at, you are very knowledgeable, and you're, as a marketer, like you know your stuff. And so being able to balance that in with some personality and some authenticity, like that's what every brand I think should strive for. Whatever that authenticity looks like in your space, it's not always going to be self-deprecating, joking, but whatever that looks like in your space, like embrace it, because it has a ton of value now.
And like have that authenticity, because it is the exact opposite of what that just generic stuff that's coming out is. But also like with that trust, like one of the things that I do that builds trust really fast is, if somebody asks me a question and I don't know the answer, I tell them that, and then I tell them I'm going to go get the answer. Like it fits into that same idea of like, people think they need to be perfect or they need to be super polished all the time or whatever it is. And yeah, that's, if you happen to know all of the answers to all questions that anyone's ever going to ask you, great. You can demonstrate that, wonderful. But there's also an element of like, if I asked you something and you were like, I have no idea about that, like you wouldn't just give me some BS answer because you could. You're going to talk about the things you actually know.
Yeah, I think being honest and forthright, like transparent, like I mean, that's, I think people like the experience, a lot of this comes back to, like we had talked about earlier, like the human experience. And I think the experience that you provide anyone is very, very important. And part of that experience is being able to tell somebody when you don't know something, or I'll come back to you, or I'll get you this, instead of like, well, I'll just do this, there's a certain, when you feel like you're getting an honest answer and somebody's being clear with you and you have transparency about it, instead of like them just telling you what they think you want to hear, or like not having enough confidence in themselves to say like, I don't know exactly, I think it's this, but let me double check on that for you. That not being able to provide those things just ruins the experience for a lot of people, for a lot of customers.
Well, I've held you for over an hour now. Is there any final thoughts?
I think this is a wonderful time that we're living in right now. There's a lot of anxiety around technology and the world at large and what's it all going to mean as we move forward. And yet it's sort of like, I also just see a lot of like creativity out there, like just human creativity, and just, I think there's an opportunity for people to refine. Like we may look back on the last 10 or 15 years where it was just sort of like, and probably I'm wrong, but the last 10 or 15 years as being the part where like everything just became the same, because we were also focused on things like SEO and writing to keywords, and it led to a lot of people having the same headline and looking the same and not want to look too different. And I think what we're entering into is like this part of like the necessity to be different, and seeing some wonderful things happening with those people, brands, creators that are willing to like really kind of push it a little bit to put some cool, fun, neat, authentic things out there. I find it really interesting. Last night was the Super Bowl. I don't know when this will air, but like Anthropic, Claude had commercial of all companies, right? It's an AI, and it had it was essentially a backhanded insult, like a full on insult to OpenAI, where it was like the response between the person and the chat was like it clearly sounded like a robot, like almost like letting you know, like, we know it sounds like this. And then partway through it was going into the response went into like, and here's answer your question. And why don't you buy this? Because OpenAI ChatGPT is what adds into it. And you're like, wow, that is really clever and it's really smart. And there's not a chance in the world that AI came up with this, and it's from an AI platform, and so I think that is really what I'm hopeful about, is like people, again, not worrying about being the same. So you show up in the top, it's being different, so that when ultimately I go to visit you, I see how different you are, or AI knows why I'm different and how I'm different.
Yeah, that's great. Well said. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This was a blast. Thanks for being my guinea pig on this.
You got something usable between my ums and ahs. Yeah.
Lots of good stuff. And I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure everybody listening to this does as well.